Our guest for today's episode is Sidharth. He is currently working as the head of design and product at Headout and was previously a part of the founding team at Instamojo. He has given more than 40 talks, 2 TEDx talks, and is a design YouTuber with his channel called King Sidharth. I am Mayank Khandelwal and you are listening to Whiteboard.fm. Hey Sidharth, welcome to Whiteboard.fm.
What's up?
How are you?
It's been crazy, a little bit crazy because living alone and managing the entire thing by yourself can get a little crazy. But overall, like I'm keeping busy, so it works out pretty well. How's
Awesome.
it with you?
Great, man. So let's get started with the interview. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I do multiple things, mostly design, product, and business and startups, technology. That's what interests me. So I started my career, learning HTML design and programming and all of that stuff. Then I was also at the same time interested in business and startups. That's how I discovered, because of startups and technology, is how I discovered design, right? And then eventually I came to discover product management. So that has been the trajectory, and in between I had a design agency. I ran like an events management sort of thing. I did work with a bunch of startups and was with Instamojo's part of Instamojo's founding team, and we did that for about 6 years. And now I'm part of Headout, where I'm managing both product and design, being the first product manager at Headout. So that's the entire story in very short brief.
Awesome. Great to have you, man. So Sidharth, I'll jump straight to the first question. So just like you mentioned, you're doing both product and design at Headout, right? So in general, when did you realize or decide that you want to pursue product as well and not just stick to design?
Right. So there were multiple factors that contributed. Right. One of the first things that started happening was I was part of Instamojo for as a designer for 5 years.
Right.
From IC role to I started being a manager, and managing the entire team, and not just being a lead designer. From there, it also by the time there was a lot of business nuance. Like B2B behavior, B2B aspirations, and about the market. There were many things that I knew were starting to have some deep shifts around. And working with some product managers, I work with this one brilliant guy called Apur Pandit, and he used to be a co-founder at pagalguy.com, this MBA preparation site. And then he came joined us as a product manager, and working with his style of thinking was really exciting, and how he thought about products and markets. Then I happened to work with a bunch of other product managers, including Dallin, who now works at Microsoft as product manager. So these were influences who got me excited about how, and taught me how a product manager thinks and what's the difference, right? And by the time it was 5 years ish, I started coming up with design-led product ideas, right? Behavior-led product ideas, where I didn't just want to design this one product or think about just the design part of it, but I also wanted to think about the business impact part of it. How is this going to be sold? Why will people buy it? So that is when I started to enter as a UX designer plus design lead into product zone, when I'm talking about, hey, we can beat this competition, or counter this competitive product with this kind of behavior. Right. We know people will pay a premium for this kind of product, right? So in a market where people are slashing prices, you are pitching a product which will command a premium, right? I remember back then when one of my first products as a product manager was Smart Links, which was the next version of payment links in Instamojo. And we wanted to charge more for Smart Links, and people were, when in our research, we concluded that people will pay more. And that this was a time when most gateways were trying to become free or slash rates to acquire more customers. And here we are building this. So that is, what got me excited. Like, how do you build products that change the behavior of the customer in the market, right? And not just take a problem statement and design to solve it the best, and a slightly different take, right? Like I say, the product managers come from variety of background, variety of flavors. They are data flavored product managers. They are, tech flavored product managers. There are UX flavored product managers. There are behavior or sales, marketing flavored product managers. Right. So I think for me, it became very UX driven product management, very behavioral psychology driven product management, right? So my product centered around that. However, I also happen to work on API products like, tech product manager would do eventually. And it was a lot of fun, right? Where you are assisting, where you define the goalpost, which is abstract, and then you assist the entire team to make that happen. That just sounded very exciting, at that time. So that is what made me move to product management at the same time.
Yeah, that does sound very motivating. So, just like we discussed before, in this interview, we are focusing more on the product management side of it. So, the next question is, what skills do you think are required for someone to get into product management?
Right. I think there's a diagram, very popular diagram out there, when you Google product management, that product management it is at intersection of UX, technology, and business, right? So you combine these three things, and the common area is where product management comes into picture. So you need to have vocabulary and mental models and understanding of what business goals are, how business operates, and how those things function, right? You also need to understand how tech scales, how tech works, what are the limitations of tech, or how do you scale that up, or what are can you deploy AI here, can you deploy ML here, can you deploy some sort of statistical tool analysis here to improve this product. So you need to have a slight understanding of data and tech as well. Then UX understanding is critical, because if your product is unusable, you don't have a sense of what how design works, then you struggle. So design, technology, and business understanding, the basic mental models being there, are very critical. This is one of the primary reasons you don't see product managers just do like very great work just when they jump out of college, right?
Right.
Most successful product managers, kick-ass product managers, transition from one role to the other, right? They are sort of grown in house, because you already have one of those fields. Most likely, maybe you were an engineer or engineering manager or a data analyst or a designer, or one of those things, or a marketer or a digital marketer, or you managed your ads for your
Right.
company. So you have some context, and then you move into product, right? So that usually works out great, because product management is about being this glue between different departments, right? So that empathy is required as well. So you need a lot of
Correct.
empathy and a lot of like really great communication skills as well, because if you don't in product management sort of role, it's not like people report to you. It's not a reporting structure, right? You're a manager of the product, not of the people, right? So oftentimes you will collaborate with different people. So if you don't have a rapport with, like, let's say, the backend team or the engineering team or the design team, you're not going to get great work done out of them. So soft skills matter more, right? How you inspire the team, how do you organize the team, how do you resolve conflict, how do you communicate, how do you preconceive and can predict how your team will behave during certain circumstances, and then pre-mediate some sort of action or plan, right? Let's say some data may not result in like clarity on a certain A/B test. So then you can prep your team that what are we expecting, what are our expectations here, and that sort of work, no, it's undefined. That's why people find it hard to define product management. But
Right.
just a lot of communication, a lot of empathy, a lot of ability to you know uh, communicate clarity when there might be a lot of ambiguity on the other side, right? And ability to change, shift, respond, and be hyper aware. So it's very soft skill enabled job. If you suck at soft skill, if you're not able to influence people, you're not gonna build a lot of products in that company.
Right. So apart from soft skills, while as important as that is, and just like you said, that is very ambiguous. The role of a product manager, it is an amalgamation of different kinds of skills, right? Ideally,
Right.
keeping soft skills as one part, if someone had to collect or kind of document a certain number of technical skills, what skills should they be to create a kind of a portfolio to apply for product management?
So let's think about it this way. When let's think of an idea of product. What is a product? When you go out there, you see a bunch of juices on shelves, right, in
Right.
the supermarket, right? So they've been packaged differently. There's branding, there's features, 100% real, this thing, preservative free, blah blah blah. Everybody's trying to stand out, and you're trying to target a certain market with certain messaging, right? Certain high premium juice will go like raw press, for example, right? They will go like, this is raw press juice, this is super premium, this is like twice as expensive as other packaged juices, and there's a target market they're targeting to, right, with cold pressed juices versus real juice or Tropicana or somebody else who's targeting very different market.
Right, right.
This is the primary work of a product manager. How you measure success of a product manager is how adoption happens and what is the business impact, right? What is the user's reaction? What are you able to solve in user's life? Which people measure by NPS, etc., and the business impact. So you may be conversion rate, etc. Whatever skills you need to for that to happen in your company will be different, right? Because if a product manager, let's say in Apple, right, working on AirPods Pro, or you are in Amazon working on Kindle, you will need a certain sense of like a supply chain, how that works, how people perceive electronics, how commodities are sold. Versus if you're product manager at some place like Netflix, then you're
Correct.
thinking about completely different things, right? How do you optimize for bit rate? Do you understand streaming? Do you understand encoding? Do you understand video formats? Do you understand production? Do you understand story? All those
A
things
lot
you
of
need
it
to
depends
understand,
on the market
which
that the company is targeting towards.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So that is why the core skill set can be easily defined as you need to have understanding of technology, you need to have understanding of UX, and you need to have understanding of business. You need to
Right.
have basic mental models, and you need to have basic skill set around these three core things. Then you add on top of that like other attributes that you may need, right? You double down on what you may need. For example, you now right, so suddenly you get thrown at an API product, right? Build this product for developers. Now API is also an offering. API is also product targeted at developers, right? How do you sell that? Then suddenly you will start looking at different hard skill set. Then
Right.
let's say if you're working on some consumer app, right? Let's say I work on Find My Parking Spot app. Now I need very different skill set, right? Like I am working on maths and data still, but it's different kind of algorithms I'm playing with. That
Right.
is, in fact, I would say is the fourth, ability of a product manager, hard skill of ability to pick up domain specific knowledge, right?
Right.
So UX design, you have business, you have tech, and the fourth thing you have is domain specific knowledge. That is what you will need to hyper focus on, whatever domain you're going to. If you work in ed tech, you start picking up education thing. What is curriculum? How do sessions work? How do students think about this? You go to food tech, you start thinking about food time, like what are the cuisines, non-veg, veg, food safety, delivery time, hot, cold, taste, non-taste, all of those kind of things. So that is the fourth ability of a product manager, that you can change your entire thinking model and pick up new material, right?
Right.
Tomorrow you start working in a law firm, you're building a law product, you will need to study law. No, like, but can I recommend all of you to study law as a hard skill? Not necessarily, right? If you're
Right.
working in a streaming startup, like law may not be so relevant to you. That is why these four skills, I would say,
Yeah.
are hyper critical to product managers, right?
That makes a
If you
lot of
don't have UX
clarity.
understanding, you can't talk. Like,
Right.
how do you, like, UX is what makes product accessible, right? And if you don't know tech, how are you gonna like propose a product which is scalable and buildable at all, right? Tomorrow you will imagine CSI like techniques, so just zoom in and then you see clear photo and then we catch criminals. That's my product. Like, it doesn't happen that way unless you understand technology, right? And same goes with business. And unless you understand why would business want to build this product and what consumer will want in it, then you struggle as well, right?
Right.
And that is, so these aren't four things. If you are not able to learn new things, learn new domain specific knowledge when you enter a new field or a product, then you will struggle, regardless of the other three skills. So these are just indispensable, right, to product managers. So that is what I would classify as core skill set for product managers.
Yeah, that actually brings a lot of clarity. Like, for everyone watching this, this would help them a lot. Anyone who wants to even apply for a product management internship or anything of that sort. So, getting to that, actually, how does Headout? What's the hiring process for product managers in terms of full time and also as interns?
Right. So right now I'm been the first product manager in the company. We were doing some interviews before this entire COVID situation had hit. We were in process of building our product management interview process, but it looks very close to testing all those three, 3-4 aspects of your, how do you behave there. So think about, so first thing we look at is resume in a product manager CV, in a product manager resume, even especially if you're going for APM, etc. Let's say going for APM or product management internship, you want to show what kind of products you have worked on, and in each project you can show one aspect of what you're good at, right? So let's say you been a designer, right? And now you're trying to apply for internship in product manager, or you've been an engineer, right? So you show all your past project and you talk about their impact and your role in it, right? So, and then you start to because you're doing applying for internship, it's possible that none of your past experiences around product management itself, but it depends on how you pitch it, right?
Right.
An engineer can also write, I build this product in so many days and then impacted X amount of customers. In product management CVs and resumes, impact is of utmost importance, right? What did it change? Did it move the GMV? Did it move the NPS? Did it change the customer satisfaction score? What was the impact, right? Maybe you did not drive it, right, as an engineer, but
Right.
you were part of it and you're aware of it. Starts to give me signal, okay, you're ready for that sort of thinking. So mentioning those impact numbers is critical for product managers, right? And if you've been a product manager and you're applying and you've worked on products in the past, you must know the business impact. And launched X product is not a like a CV item. That's your job as product manager, right? Did you launch it faster than the competition? Did you launch it crazier? Did you launch it with less amount of people? Did you launch it with the bigger impact? Right? Launching a product is not a claim on product management certificate. You better be launching products, right? Or managing products. So that is one thing to remember when applying anywhere as a product manager, right? You want to start mentioning whether you worked as a designer, whether you worked as an engineer, or you worked as a marketer, what was the business impact of the projects you worked on, right?
Right.
When you're working to revise your CV and resume for a product internship. And if you're a product manager, you've been an APM and you're applying for product manager role, then you must mention the business impact of the products and features you worked on, right? What was the ultimate outcome? Now, for the interview process, when we have first exploratory conversation with almost all product roles. So we see where you are at and where you may want to head in the future, right? Whether we see alignment there or not. Then first we talk about market, right? We want to understand how you think about market. So we'll talk about the products you were working on, what company you were working on, what do you think about the prospects of that company, right? As a product manager, you have awareness of like what was working, what was not working, and you have a lot of ideas around what could work, right? So we dive into that sense. The first thing we check obviously is market sensibilities, which is the business aspect we were talking about. How are you aware of how much does it cost to acquire a customer? How long does the customer have to stay with you for you to get to break even or to make profit? What is the LTV of the customer, right? These are some basic aspects of business, right, that you must understand as a product manager. The second thing that immediately gets tested is your communication skills. Most likely I'm going to be reviewing a product manager who's not from my domain, right? Maybe they're coming from education, maybe they're coming from B2B, right? And that's when how good are they at explaining the basics and realities of that industry to me also tells me how much they know. So that's the first round. Second round, of course, we get dive in UX. What do they think about UX? How do they explain their personal favorite apps? Third, obviously, gets into technical round where they speak with CTO or engineering manager, where they understand where they stack. Can you talk to engineers? Can you resolve conflicts with an engineer? Can you break down a product into chunks that needs to be built, right? When you build as a designer, when you build a screen, you go like, yeah, this is the entire screen, but it's not going to get built in one go. Can you break it down in chunks and pieces, the logical steps that it can be built and tested in and released in? So those are the couple of rounds, and the last one becomes cultural round, which is very critical for product managers, which again focuses on how did you resolve last conflict? What was the last fight you had? What was the last disagreement that you had that you anyway went ahead with, where you did not necessarily agree with the decision, but you went ahead, and why, right? What was one decision that you were proven wrong in that you took, right? And how did you handle that? So this comes back again to the product management skill of soft skill, right? Because as a product manager, you're going to decide and communicate. These are two primary roles you're going to do. Keep making decisions, and communicate, right? Most of the decisions are not in your hand.
Right.
It's not possible from engineering. Engineering doesn't have time for it. Can you change that? No, but you decide what to do now, right? So you're a decision maker, right? And you're a communicator of the decision that this feature has been dropped because we can't build it. This is how it impacts our plan. This is how it impacts our roadmap. This is how it impacts the business projections, right? Then you over communicate it to everyone. So that is the last round becomes very, very critical. And of course, when we speak of culture fit, one of the critical things we're talking about is the work ethic, right? And as a product manager, work ethic is critically important, right? What alarms do you choose to raise, and what you don't choose to raise and resolve within, These become organizational decisions, right? You will see at certain product companies, they just suck at certain things, right? Like, for example, I keep cribbing about Jira. Like, and Atlassian software, like it's a product culture, right? It starts to seep into culture that we don't do certain things right? And that's, if you don't change that early on, then it becomes more difficult to change later on. And that's what we call the product culture in organization, right? What kind of products do you have a DNA to build, right? Like, let's look at Cult, right? Cult Fit. They were doing all of these exercises, etc. They were running these centers, and very quickly their team changed, came together and changed to like live streaming, etc. Right? And that's what we call an innovative product culture, right? They let go of all hypotheses and
Okay.
turned full digital, right? And that's sort of, what we mean by product culture, how agile you are there, right? I don't want to use word agile because it has other connotations in product management, so I want to use the word flexible, right? Being that pivotal role in the company and being that voice that, boss, this is not going to work, you need alternative strategy, is going to be very critical part of you being a product manager, right? That's where you move business direction. So yeah, that is what we look for. I hope that gives you an idea of how this pans out. Of course, what we talked about later in the interview process is more heavy for senior folks, and what we talked earlier in the process is more heavy for junior folks.
Oh, definitely. That's a great explanation, actually. Also, Siddharth, can you explain how are product specs or PRD is written at Headout?
For sure, for sure. So let's talk about product specification in general, right?
Right.
And then we'll move to an example. One of the critical things you're going to do as a product manager is communicate, and one of the primary ways you will communicate is written documentation, right?
Right.
Written or visual documentation, right? I like to think, at least for myself, PRDs and these written documentation and prototypes are the biggest communication tools, right? So prototyping is another skill set in UX you want to pick up as a product manager, because you sit down, you draw diagrams, hey, imagine this happens, then imagine this happens. No one can imagine, right?
Right.
Like you're a product person, you can imagine. Just build a prototype and send it out, and you don't need anybody to imagine. People are on board. Some of the most successful product managers I've seen, how they have convinced an entire company and got them on board onto a new idea. They just sent a killer prototype, and killer prototype, I don't mean like full polish and everything. It just showed, it was really basic wireframe prototype, but it showed the basic concept and the
Right.
aha moment, right, of the product. What is the core proposition, value proposition of the product? They were able to communicate using a prototype, and that got them to places, right? So prototyping will also help you do specification, because it helps you to think in how this product will be chunked out, right? So one of the primary reasons of you writing a product specification is there are three things you will define. What the why does this product exist, for whom, and what does it achieve? Second thing is, what is this product? How does it behave? How does it function? What are the requirements? And third is all the glue in between, right?
Okay.
Because this product requires content writers. This product requires media ops. This product requires, at the same time, UX design, then backend engineering, then front end engineering, then QA work, then legal work, then the contract signing, then category managers, ops work,
Okay. Lot
communication
of
of
processes
SOP,
and
support.
then.
Right. So that
Right.
is, so the central piece, typically,
Mhm.
what you write a central document, a single source of truth, when you're starting a new product, which is typically called a PRD, a product requirement document, right? And let's, in fact, look at a product requirement document to
Yeah.
see how it looks like at Headout. And I'll just share my screen. So now you're looking at my screen, and this is a product requirement document of something we call vouchers and tickets.
Right.
Now, what are vouchers and tickets? You can check out on my YouTube channel. There is a full case study on how we design tickets. But this is the PRD for that, right? Now, the first thing you see is the goal, right? That the
Right.
goal of this is to create a system where we standardize, we can improve customer communication, allow future improvement and improve efficiency in various parts of the system, right? Of course, they can be better defined, but this was what we knew at the starting point.
Right.
And the product will be successful within 60 days of launch if we are able to reduce customer support ticket stays around these 3 points. So it clearly defines what is the success criteria for this product, right? If you're able to see this versus today, then your product is successful, right? So this is typically the first part of, you're introducing the product. What the hell does this product do? For whom is it? For whom is it become next, which is user personas. These differ from user personas in design, because here you're just describing different users of the same product, right? The
Correct.
same product, uh, primary user is customer, of course, of a ticket, but operation staff also generates that ticket. They add
Right.
details to it. Vendor ground staff verifies that ticket, right? And your support staff gives you support around that ticket. And this is what you define around how do these different personas or users of your product interact with that product. What are their goals with that product, right? So this allows you to make sure that you cover all these sides, right? If
Right.
a operator or is allowed to change a detail, then the customer and ground staff should be notified. If a customer is allowed to raise a support ticket, then support staff needs to have access to that ticket, right? So you can't miss out these building these pieces. So that's when you start to realize as a designer, most likely you're going to be working on the customer side of the bits,
Correct.
right? But
Exactly.
a lot of times you're working on other side as well, because vendor may be using API to do this, right?
True.
And that's what you don't deal as a designer. So this is what you define. What are the aspects, different interaction, human beings, types of human beings that interact with your product. Then we come to something called a business process flow, which is what often you would hear in engineering as business logic, right? How does business logic differ from let's say programming logic? Business logic revolves around critical business decisions. So I'm going to show you one of the diagrams in we these are called swim lane diagrams. Now, swim lane diagrams are typically just your flowchart diagrams, but
Right.
what they have unique is they have lanes, like who's doing what sort of thing, right? So I'm just going to try and open this. I hope this works. And there we go. It worked.
Swim is something engineering students come across to, at least computer science students come across. But for a lot of other
Right.
folks, it's very new.
Right. So this is a flowchart diagram with
Right.
lanes, right? And here we have lane of a user and a system, right, which is our system, and the staff and the vendor. At times we split them up if there's like dual role, right?
Right.
So now this system is describing various functions. For example, it's describing booking flow, ticket generation, customer notification, generating ticket URL, and various functions in this
Correct.
operation, right? So we are looking at the flow of how booking flow works. A customer attempts booking, right? And does it work? Is the payment successful, right? If no, then you retry and that loop goes back. This I think was edited. Some bug is here. This should say yes, right? So if it was successful, then is booking automated. Then no, and then you add it to manual queue, which will be processed by a person. If it's automated, then you attempt a booking. Then all of that goes on, right? And then
Right.
you decide, okay, was it successful? Yes. Then you go to this different process, which is ticket generation, which is a different tab here, right?
Yeah.
And if you were not successful, then you make X amount of attempts. This is a business decision. How many times you attempt before giving
Correct.
up. And if you have made X attempts, then you say booking failed and you initiate a refund. If no, then you keep retrying, right? So this is the simple booking process flow of how do you, and now how does it differ from engineering process? Because we are not defining in what service it happens and what code is it written, how
Right.
many times is it, like we are not defining any of those failure points. Are different APIs? None of that. This is the business logic, that this is how business thinks about this entire process, right? And now in different engineering departments can take different calls, right? For backend, this is a different service. For front end, this is a different kind of chart, right? For front end, these are states, that you will have this state, you will have failure state, you will have this state, you will have this state, you will have this state. All of these states will be there, right?
Right.
So this is a business process flow. There can be multiple kind of flows like that. The
Yeah.
second thing, and this is describing the 4 processes that we have described, right?
Right.
Then we come to something called a logical data model. This is typically a entity relation map. This one is
Okay.
not done right now, but I can show you an example. Bunch of example exist online. Like you can see, this is essentially a DB field.
Right.
This is one of the best example, right? This is for IMDb. You can see, and what it does is you have author, you have publisher, which is connected to ISBN. This is for actually just for a publishing house, right?
Right.
Who you can have a warehouse, you can have a shopping cart, and then a customer. So this is how these various entities relate to each other. This is essentially
Correct.
describing DB structures.
This is
You
where
what you're trying to say tell.
this is where the PMs need to know some knowledge about databases.
Correct. And
Right.
engineering, right? What data are you storing? Why are you storing?
Exactly.
How does it relate to other is it an audit trail
Right.
versus some static data storage? Decisions around this is where you can start discussions with engineering around, hey, is it more optimal to store this data in a separate table because it frequently changes? What is our strategy there? What is the future scope of this data? And all of that comes in,
Right.
right? Typically, a lot of folks do this. Product managers do this. A lot of companies require engineering managers to do this. This can change person to person. You are the owner of this product, of this PRD, not necessarily writer of this entire piece, right? Maybe it's too complex. Maybe the data models are related to AI and ML. So you only understand the inputs that can be given, not the in-between processes. So maybe you don't write those in-betweens, right? But you own, and the fact that these need to be written and decided is your own ownership, right? As a product manager. Then we come to the biggest chunk of product PRD, which is functional requirements. A functional requirement is essentially what needs to be done. What are we creating, right? Most of this will be around new capacity, engineering capacity, etc. that you have to build, new products functions that you have to write, or new services that you create. The first thing is obviously you generate headout tickets, right? So we are telling them that these two kind of tickets you will generate, and then a rough wireframe is given, right? And the detailed designs will be linked, right? Because we can't keep, as designs evolve, we can't keep coming back to it. This is just to give you an idea, right? And one of the crazy things that comes in question is, should product managers create wireframes? Sure, like if you don't have designer, create wireframes, but if you do have design team, etc., you create suggestion wireframes, right? That this is what my goal with the product is, and if you have senior folks, you can just leave this as it is with the headline, and they will fill up the details, right? And then we come to the types of tickets. Now, if you see headline number 5.1, these are all part 5.1.1, 5.1.2. These are sub headlines under it, right? If you're defining tickets, what all types exist, right? In what states can they exist? What are the types by redemption type, right? Now, redemption type is a mobile. Yeah, all these are use cases, right? All these, and which will later on go on to define workflows. So this is another sort of use cases, right? That when we go by date time specifications, right? Date time duration specifics, we call. These are all the types of possible information that is highlighted, right? For example, you're going on a fixed date for a fixed time for a fixed duration, which is most tickets. A cinema ticket is this kind of ticket, right? Versus you have flexible date, flexible time, and fixed duration, right? This is typically your entry passes. You can only enter a bowling arena for 1 hour, but anytime during the day or anytime during the week or whatever. So these are different types of tickets that we are defining by different classifications, right? Then we have a special note on handling third-party tickets, because we don't get that kind of control. So they are handled separately. Then again, if there's a very special case, right? We start to come to that. Another thing we define is that typically that most cases, one booking results in one ticket. But in future, this will change. You can buy multiple tickets together, a cart behavior. So this will change. We'll need to introduce a new entity called order, right? Because you paid for one order, then earlier, right now you go to tickets section in Headout app. That is also your receipts, because you paid for single ticket one time. But when this happens, you will have to create a new section called orders, because you paid for one order, but it can generate multiple tickets, right? So how do we handle that? Then we go to customer communication and notification. When is customer emailed? When is it an in-app notification? You will have a popular, how does Slack decide to send you a notification? This is where it came from a PRD, right? Like this. So this is how we define how we send notification. Then what is the difference between a structure of booking and order? This could be moved into the logical data model that we're talking about. Then we come to structured data. Now we're defining that all tickets now should be moved to structured data. What are the structured data fields, right? Which we have defined in this sheet. So as you can see, we don't necessarily put everything here, but we put links to the source of truth here, right? So this is structured data field. These are all the fields that need to go in, the structure of the backend, and this is how they're defined. These are the variables that they can go. For example, under accessibility, health restrictions are open text field, right? But a host title, like what is a host called? Are they called guide, tour guide? Are they called host or staff? Contact our staff, contact our tour guide, or contact our host. You will have a drop down. You can select that in this ticket, which terminology is more appropriate, right? So this is linked.
That are also mentioned.
Right. All the constraints are mentioned, validations will be mentioned, and we'll keep fleshing it out as and when we get nearer, right? And these two things, as you can see, are work in progress, which is changes in the reservation section, which is ticket section for the customer, and changes in the admin panel that will be required for the staff to manage this new sort of tickets, right? These are under discussion right now. We don't have clarity around this. So they are in, and will I be the decision maker as a product manager on all of this? No. I will be the person who is responsible for getting these decisions made and then documenting them. right?
Correct.
Most of these decisions will be a collaboration between ops and engineering, right? And then we come to the last part, typically, which is non-functional requirement. These are typically related to performance, ops, quality, right? Let's say you are saying that let's say you work in Book My Show.
Correct.
You're making digital tickets. Now you say that digital tickets there should be a person sitting, at that place where these digital tickets are redeemed, helping
Right.
people out so the experience doesn't go bad. Is that a functional requirement? No, that's an operational requirement. This is where you put it. The mobile ticket should load offline. Is that a functional requirement? Sure, they have to write this, etc., etc. But we don't care how do you do this. That's a non-functional requirement. The
Correct.
ticket should load in X seconds. The page should load in X seconds, right? These qualitative metrics, or quantifiable qualitative metrics, which is an odd thing, but which are not logical decisions, but are like benchmark decisions, right?
Correct.
Should complete in X amount. Every support ticket related to this should be answered in 24 hours. These are non-functional requirements that you write. Then you typically have a continuous discovery or release plan. This is where typically a product marketing manager comes in bigger companies, where they have a product release plan, go-to-market plan. How do we roll this out? This is a stage release, or this is like who all will be involved, much percentage of people will be rolled out to. How do we communicate this? For example, you work at Cred, right? Cred came out with a new Morphic update. It was first rolled out to Android, then rolled out to certain people in iOS, and then being rolled. This rollout plan, what impact does it have, and why do we take this route, is put in here to the GTM or release plan, right? And it will often some people will also include life cycle here, which is also includes how is this product gonna be sunset. If tomorrow
Correct.
you decide to shut down this product, what are the steps you need to take to shut down this product, right? If you're building Instagram, maybe you don't need to think much. Maybe you just need to give them data export for 90 days and then you're done. You're a fintech product. You're a credit card company. To shut down all credit cards, you must make sure all liabilities are taken off, right?
Right.
So you will put that here in the sunset plan, that this when you, because tomorrow when new product manager picks it up, they may forget, they may not know the nuance. So you write it down there and then, that to shut down this product, these all requirements will be required. That you tell accounts, you send notification, the contract is 90 days, you send a 90-day notification, all that comes here. And then you have other references. Often we add another table for open questions, but right now these days we are using comments in Google Sheets to do that.
Right.
Just tag the relevant person with the open question and they start resolving it. So
Sure.
this is a roughly a structure of PRD, what it looks like and what it talks about. And as a product manager, you own this piece. You don't necessarily write and decide each and every piece, but most likely you get these decisions made, right? For example, I don't know what all fields go, what all titles our staff can be given. Host
Correct.
guide, tour guide, I don't know. But if I see two very close enough titles, that's where I help resolve that conflict, right? And at times I'll realize, oh, in English that word is close enough, but in German it's not close enough. In German, these two words mean very different things, and you don't want to confuse them. Then I'll go and document that, right,
Right.
as a product manager, that we keep these two words separate in English still, and they are two separate words, because in other languages these are not the same words,
Correct.
right? So these are the nuances. Again, like language is something specific to my domain, because we are international sellers of
Right.
tourist material, right? If you're working in a next billion product, it will be very different thing for you, right? It will be different kind of language problems for you, right? So this is what I meant by like why it is so hard to define again and again. You keep going back to define a product management role, and that is why your agility and flexibility to pick up new skills and domain knowledge becomes critical. And yep, that's product specifications, and that's how it
Amazing.
looks like.
Amazing. Amazing. So Siddharth, moving from general product management, the holistic product management, let's move into the specifics. Let's start with pricing. So what process is followed by product managers when building a pricing model?
Wow, that's a, you can start a series of podcast on pricing models, right? Because pricing models are deeply tied to business models, right?
Okay.
For example, if you look at pricing of Slack, right, it is a very interesting pricing versus traditionally what people have done in enterprise tools, right?
Correct. So, so let's get into the process of how product managers approach towards making a pricing model. For example, if there's a particular feature, how do they figure out what kind of pricing model should be made and how should it be made? In brief.
Right. In very brief, typically you have one time or recurring pricing models to speak very briefly, and it depends on the value and usage where you price it. There's also, it also deeply ties into the business model where the business is making money. So Instagram's business model dictates that they make money from advertisers, so the pricing model is auction based, right? One time auction based rather than recurring, versus somebody like Dropbox who charges customers and there's a repeat usage, they continue to host. So it becomes more around that recurring sort of model, right? So it depends on the value you provide and the other market players, how they price stuff in their market. And typically then most companies will follow, like, will not drastically change from recurring to one-time model within the industry. What they will start changing on is what value proposition they give you. So in a flat pricing model, you may try to give more features in one go, or a surety in one go, 30-day money back guarantee and all those things. In a recurring model, you may try to add more features, more support, faster turnaround time, right? Feature parity, and those things become important. So pricing is a very, very, very complex subject and deeply tied into the business model of the company. So we can go on discussing it for a very long time. But to give you a very brief idea, that is what we look at. We look at market. We look at what other products exist. We hyper focus on what kind of money does the consumer spend today, the user spend today, to solve that same problem. Let's say I'm building an account or tax automation tool. I know you spend recurring salary of X person accountant on this, right? But at the same time, you have a collar to catch. So
Correct.
unless I give you both a collar to catch and a cheaper outcome there, right? You are not likely to switch, to that pricing model. So value replacement, what are you replacing and how much, there's a cost, is the typical starting point for pricing models for most product managers, right? Let's say video transcription, right? How much do I spend in video transcriptions, right? That is going to be the starting point to think about that sort of model. And can I really undercut it? So let's say I pay $5 per hour, $10, $20 per hour of like transcription, and suddenly you build some tool which does it using AI and you price it at $5 a month. It's an obvious yes, right?
Right.
It's an obvious yes, and you know the range you can play within. But the moment you drop it down, you increase the market size, right? The more you increase the price up, you reduce the market size that you can
Right.
target. Same thing Apple does with its various products, right? And a Mac Pro is super high price, but is very, very limited market with production houses and
Correct.
big media companies, right? Versus MacBook Air, which is premium price, but because of its features and stand and everything, commands a very good market, because that premium price comes for stability and being able to use it even when you're not tech savvy, right? So that is how you understand your positioning, your market dynamic, your business model, and then come to a pricing model, right? And start thinking about, these are typically the starting points. And
Correct.
if you are starting out completely from scratch, think about, how does the customer solve the problem today? How much do they pay for it in terms of time and money both?
Are there any tools that are used by product managers at Headout for building pricing models?
Not necessarily. So our pricing is done by category managers, because
Okay.
the pricing of the actual product is on the ground, right?
Okay.
So it's a very different model. That's why I said that at times you may work in a company where you don't have much
Right.
to do
Right.
with pricing at all, right? So in Headout, product managers don't decide pricing. Pricing category managers do, right?
Right.
What we decide on is the effort spent on internal resources spent on certain projects, right? Which again dictates the ROI of the company at a broader level, right? Versus marketing is deciding how much uptick, what is they want to bid, what is the acquisition cost, and then how much margin do we have? Can we increase the prices? What is price sensitivity? All those pieces, right? So auctioning model works there a lot, right? So you can study auction modeling if you want to understand that sort of pricing,
From
right?
where can someone
But
study
yeah,
that from?
generally like inventory pricing. Sorry.
Like, can someone study that from auctioning model pricing, inventory pricing?
There are bunch, it's a very well understood, there are bunch of YouTube videos, there are bunch of articles, white papers as well, because it's one of the oldest models online. Google
Right.
brought it up with Google Ads. So it's very well understood model as well. You will find from research papers to actual data put out there by people. You just need to do a Google search, right? On
Okay.
auction based pricing models, papers, white papers, YouTube videos, and you'll find tons of resources there. You can look at subscription models, you can look up so again, like, pricing is such a complicated this thing that there is no one set answer, right?
Right.
That I can give you, right? You could launch an Instagram like tool which is paid by users, and that will be priced very differently versus
Correct.
right now which is priced by ads, right? So it's a very, very detailed and complex discussion, and it ties deeply into, like, a pricing model can at times break a company, right? And
Right.
in a certain given market. So it really depends, company to company, product to product, market to market, what you want to do in that market. It really
Absolutely.
depends.
Absolutely. Makes sense. So, Siddharth, moving on from pricing, let's move to data metrics, right? So, how are data
Right.
metric decisions made at Headout? Data metric based.
So when you look, there's a brilliant book, which I think every product manager should read, which is What the CEO Wants You to Know, right? Which talks about basic fundamentals of a business. Let's say you're running a lemonade stand, right? You have some input cost. You buy lemon, you buy this thing. You have some staff cost. You sit there, some effort cost, and then you sell it, and then you service it, you refrigerate, you some maintenance, ongoing cost, and at the end you have some sales. You have a margin, how much uptick you had, like it costs you 10 rupees to make one glass of lemonade, you sell it for 20 rupees, you have 50% margin, right? These basics do not change from
Right.
business to business. Top line, bottom line, sales, margin, profit, these do not change, right? So first you understand that, because all metrics eventually point to that. If you don't understand basic working metrics of a business, all metrics are going to go out of the window, right? In the end, the business will be like, how much profit did you improve? How much top line or bottom line did you improve? How much conversion did you improve? Either you improve top line, bottom line, or efficiency in the process, right? There are not many other things to do.
Correct.
Now, that also helps you define what is the business priority, right? Because improving efficiency in certain process has certain kind of ROI, right? Let's say there's a famous case studies, people joke about, like, some airline started removing one olive. They used to give two olives in salad. They give the one olive in salad. They save some $1 million, right? So that has certain kind of impact, versus if you increase the number of customers coming in the funnel, that is a different kind of impact, right? So company prioritizes retention over acquisition, right? These kind of priorities also exist, so you must understand that. So you know where leverage works better. Then you come to final metrics, right? How do you monitor and measure these different parts of the business,
Right.
right? Typically in company like Flipkart, top line matters a lot, because everything is a function of that. It's a known formula. So GMV, GBV is what they were tracking, right?
Can you explain
But
what
eventually everybody
top
started.
line, what is
So
GMV?
GMV is gross merchandise value, right? And in terms of in our industry where we do bookings, it is gross booking value, which literally means sum of all the bookings, of all the amount of bookings or purchases done, right? Then you have something like net profit, which is actual profit left on the table. Then you have margin, which is what is the percentage of a sale amount that you have in between, the delta between the sale and the production cost, right? So maybe you have 10% margin, 50% margin. Services have higher margin than products do. Technical products have way higher margin than physical products or services do,
Right.
right? Because you write WhatsApp, look at WhatsApp. If they started charging you, they write the code once, they sell it over and over and over again, right? So that is how typically those metrics work. Most likely, then when you come to engagement based apps, let's say Instagram, where you're looking, then engagement becomes, and time spent on the app becomes the primary metric. That's why anything that you do on Instagram that makes people spend more time on Instagram or TikTok or any of the social networks will go more viral, right? If you comment, you watch it longer, then Instagram shows it to more people. So
Right.
in engagement sort of world, time spent and engagement metrics become more appropriate, right? That is where you start to focus. That's why people want to do live. They're building those sort of features which holds people on the platform more, because the longer you stay, the more chances I have to show you ads, which
Right.
means the more revenue I can get out of you, more the LTV, which is lifetime value of a customer, increases, right? Lifetime value is how much money are you able to make on this customer in a lifetime, right? So these are various product metrics that start to come in. Typically, they're very different metric models you can study. There is triple ARR, which is acquisition, activation, and uh, then there's retention, revenue, and sorry, double A, triple R, acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and what do you call it, referral, right? So that's one model, that how many people you acquire, then how many activate and start using it, how much revenue do you get, how many of them retain and do not drop off, then how many of them invite more people to join in, right?
Correct.
That's one model. There are many such models you can Google for, which then you can build your sort of analytics dashboard, your KPI dashboard. and then you start in each quarter you will take the OKR approach or some sort of approach, or in a B2B you will take a longer sort of timeline and try to improve one of those metrics, right? Let's say we want to improve the ROI on this, we want to improve the turnaround time on this, right? So each department sort of have their favorite metrics. Support has stat turnaround time, right, and customer satisfaction score. The overall company has NPS, right? Marketing has conversion rate or click through rate. So you sort of start to see the entire picture, like how does the customer start from finish is serviced by the customer, what all numbers go in there, and now you can start to pinpoint where we suffer, where we are not efficient, and how do we improve that. That becomes the role of a product manager. So it's very difficult to define skill, but role of product manager I can define to you in one sentence. You'll be given a KPI, you will do shit to improve it. That's it. That's literally a product manager's role. How you do it, it's up to you. You're going to send an email campaign, you're going to shout on top of your lungs and on top of a building. You want to build a new feature, you want to build feature adoption, you want to do webinar, you want to do brand awareness. It's up to you, boss. This is one KPI you have to improve. Go figure heaven and earth to make this happen, right? We want to improve our retention. So that is how the more senior you are, the more ambiguous of that problem statement comes to you. The more junior you are, product manager, the more specific comes to you, right? Improve retention in this cohort. We have cohorts as well. Cohorts are segments. Segmentation is very important. You have power users, non-power users, not so good users. You have different kind of segmentations you can do. So some junior APM will be given a problem statement like, hey, improve in this segment of power users, improve adoption of this particular feature. So make sure more people see it, right? Or that could be, so those are the kind of goals you start getting. And that is what your job becomes, to improve those metrics, right? So and then you collaborate with these different teams.
The kind of metrics that are supposed to be calculated or that are required are based on the business goals naturally, and also sort of based on the product/customer goals.
Yes. So if you are a company which does one-time sales, right, then retention is not a key metric. Like say for a real estate company, retention is not going to be a big metric. Right. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So after these metrics are decided, how do you decide the systems that would collect these metrics? Is that just a part that is that majorly a tech team based work, or do product managers play an important part in that as well? And if they do, how?
Data engineering and product management will be three people who will play a key role. If you have ops in your company, they will also play a key role in defining how these are measured. Certain ops kind of things are measured by ops tool themselves. For example, your support operations, right? The turnaround time will be measured by the tool itself, right? You don't have to measure it separately. Most product-based analytics will be some event-based analytics. You will use something like GTM, and you will plug in something like Amplitude or Mixpanel, right? If you want something more mature, because Google Analytics does not scale.
Other tool?
Google Analytics, where people start.
Okay.
Right. They use Google Analytics also. Google also offers GTM, which is Google Tag Manager, where you can plug in multiple of these services and send data out to multiple services. Right. Some people will build in-house DBs and services on top of that with Metabase and everything. Or some people will build, use Amplitude or Mixpanel or tools like that. Those are product analytics tools. Some companies which are marketing heavy and not product heavy will suffice with Clever Tap and those kind of tools, but those are more marketing analytics tools, not really product analytics tools.
Sure.
They don't give you the kind of reliability that you want. In very specific kind of stages, a product manager gets involved to decide how these particular functions will be measured. For example, I want to measure success of search results, right? Now, when do I call it success? At what event? At what interaction do I call it success? Do I call it success when you click the search result, or do I call it success when you click the search result and did not come back, right? That's an important nuance where I need to understand UX. And I collaborate with my UX researcher and my UI team to understand the implications of where we measure that, right? How we define that success rate of the search. So that is where product managers get involved of the nuances of where this particular item should be measured, what things should be measured, how will you use this in an analysis or success of the product and business, right? What are the implications of this being a precise rate versus delayed, right? You have those kind of trade-offs, right? For example, you're deciding, you say that I'm going to take DB field of all the bookings done, and that's going to be my booking value. But that
Right.
does not take into consideration the cancellations done, right? Now, depending on your analysis, that may or may not be important, right? For your consideration. If you're
Correct.
doing ops work, it is important. If you're doing UI work and marketing work, it does not matter, right? Because that had nothing to do with design and marketing. Why that got cancelled. So yeah, that is how you look at these metrics, and these are very standard metrics. That's why I would just start with this book called What the CEO Wants You to Know. They'll give you a framework of how business works. When you start to map that out, you will start to realize what numbers in your company relate to these kind of signals, and then you can get level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, where you keep defining more and more metrics. Another way to look at metrics in product management is lead and lag metrics. Certain metrics give you a lead signal before the lag signal happens. For
Correct.
example, if we improve our booking flow, the drop-off rate will and the click-through rate will improve, right? Will increase. Drop-off rate will decrease before the booking conversion rate increases,
Right.
right? So way before we see a GBV improvement, gross booking value, or GMV improvement, we'll see a conversion rate improvement. Before we see a conversion rate improvement, we will see a CTR rate improvement, right? Before we see a CTR rate improvement, we'll see a bounce rate improvement. So they are lead and lag metrics, right? And the quality of signal changes, right? An improvement in bounce rate will not necessarily result in higher GMV, right? But an improvement in conversion rate definitely will, right? But that is where you come to quality of signal, reliability of signal, and those kind of things, where you must get into data and analytics, studying basics of stats, right? Really helps. If you're able to work on certain data sets yourself, a skill set like IPython notebook, so you learn basics of Python and data analytics, and you can do much of the data analysis yourself. If somebody gives you a CSV dump, that is going to be super critical skill, because with data and prototypes, right, you can tell stories and you can move an entire company. With
Right.
prototype, you convince people to build it. With data, you show this is the impact we had, and then you do it again and again and again and again, right? So yeah, that
All
completes
the
the cycle
viewers
of a
who are
product
watching
manager.
this should definitely Google all the terms that they don't understand. Because I understand majority of them, and there's a lot of insight once they Google and they keep clicking through and researching about them. Great. So while
Yeah.
we're studying about these metrics, while we're talking about these metrics in terms of building a feature, when it comes to troubleshooting, what's the difference in the type of process?
Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by
Sure. So,
troubleshooting?
for example, when you're working on a feature and maybe some goals did not result in the way they were expected to be, so how are they troubleshooted such that they are directed to the kind of success that you
Yeah.
want?
So let's say we fail to meet a certain goal and it did not
Right.
go as planned, right? Then then we do some sort of a retrospective as well, like what happened there and why it might have failed, right? There is often analysis. Typically, we start like looking at what were the expectation in terms of numbers, right? In the lead signals, and where did it start dropping off? So let's say we improved our booking flow, bounce rate improved, time taken to booking also improved, but conversion did not improve, right? That was, and then we go back to our numbers and start looking at L2 numbers, right? Level 2 numbers. Okay, sure, people spend less time, right? But they were bouncing off on dropping off of step number 4, right? Has that changed? Are they bouncing off later on in the process? What have we changed? What information have we changed there? Can we watch a bunch of sessions to understand what might be going through users' mind? Can we speak to a bunch of users to understand why this may be happening, right? Then we may come up with two more hypotheses. Okay, maybe they're dropping off because it has a negative messaging here. Maybe they're dropping off because the screen is too complex and convoluted, right? Then on those two hypotheses, depending on how much it costs, we can build another prototype and test that hypothesis out, right?
Right.
Or we may realize, oh, the number says that people like this event is just not firing, it does not look right. Then you realize, oh, there was a tech bug,
Right.
right? So it can be anything. Is it behavioral thing? Is it information asymmetry? Is it UX problem? Is it a value proposition problem? Is it too much complexity? Like then you start to dive deeper into to look for signals. What could have gone wrong, right? For example, we knew that people who search on our website tend to convert more, but that sheer number of people was dropping even though our traffic was increasing. Now, what is going on? Like, right? Like we did search placement experiment, more people are searching, but suddenly the total number of people searching is also dropping and percentage is also dropping while the rest of the traffic is growing.
Right.
Now you start to realize that the reason that was happening is because the search algorithm is failing in quality. earlier you used to have X number of results, so people search more and more and more. And now the first result also with because search algorithm has fallen in quality and matches more, so people are seeing no results, and then they don't try another search.
Right.
Right. So over time, and people who search are typically people who retain, right, who know your brand. That's why they're searching on your website. So it becomes a learned behavior. If search
Correct.
wasn't working, now I'm less likely to gonna use search moving on, right? So that is how you start to look into, oh, so this quality of search. I don't see a what I'm seeing here is people are not doing repeat search, which has, I have two hypotheses. Either people found what they were looking for, or they did not find. The only way I can look at is search success rate. Now I build that diagram and I suddenly realize, oh, search match rate, like no result rate, which is number of people who find no results per 100 search, people who search, uh,
Correct.
increase from 10 to 30%, which means earlier out 10 people who searched did not find a result. Now 3 out of 10 people who are searching are not finding results, and that's why we see this effect, even though we improve the rest of the
Right.
whatever, like we improve the rest of the search placement. So this is how you do sort of with data and UX questioning, non-direct questioning, or
It comes
UX
with seeing every
interviewing the
possibility
customer.
and then ruling out everything that was done properly,
Right.
and then figuring and then leading it down to a particular hypothesis that either this or that.
Right. And
Right.
validating with either data or validating with that with an interview, with a conversation with the customer. And if
Right.
you validate with both, that is the best validation ever.
Awesome. So moving on from data metrics, let's move to testing products, right? So testing, let's move to, can you explain to everyone what A/B testing is? And also, how do you decide which features require A/B testing to be done?
So let's say you have two copies, right? Two headlines or two pricing models, right? One has 5 features for $5 a month. Another has 20 features for $7 a month.
Right.
Right now, uh, you wanna know, can I do $6 a month and 15 features? Does that work or not? Right now, that is where we start to do testing. What we mean by testing is that we're gonna show two different things to a large number of similar sort of people and see which works better. Right now,
Right.
how do we define which works better? It depend on feature to feature. Right. That is the basic premise of a A/B test. Now, A/B test implies that you have two versions of the same item hypothesis. It could be button, copy, landing page, proposition. It could be different pricing number. It could be different image. Depends on the higher the traffic you have, the more traffic, number of people you have, the sheer sample you have, the more nuanced thing you can test. If
Correct.
you have just 1,000 customers visiting your websites a day, it'll take you 6 months to conclude an A/B test with some sort of statistical significance. It's not
Correct.
worth it, right? Might as well just take people's opinion in person and then do that sort of thing. But if you have 10,000 customers coming every minute, then you can even test facial expression of the same model, right? And do that sort of thing. So it depends on the traffic extreme there. And then you can also get into something called a multivariant testing, right? Where you test more than A and B variation. You have variation A, B, C, D, E, F. Those are multivariant testing. And typically what you're looking for, most people, what they will do, how they will start with A/B testing is they'll have two versions of landing page and see which one converts better, right? This is where marketing starts with A/B testing. Or you will start with two buttons on the copy and see which one gets clicked more. And there you're looking for statistical significance, which is another subject you must study. In confidence intervals and statistical significance in data analytics is critical for a product manager. Just because a 13% improvement came because you changed something does not mean anything without me looking at the statistical significance of that number. Because it could be just 10 people, right? The rest of the funnel has 10% conversion rate with million people, and
Correct.
you said I did improvement to 30%, but the 100 people this thing, only did that. That says nothing. 30 people, 100 people can be noise in front of million people, right? So that is very becomes very important in sort of A/B testing world. And that is not the only kind of testing. If you go to the UX field, and there's guerrilla testing you can do, because building a product costs money.
Right.
You can make prototype with your team, a high fidelity prototype with your design team, go and test out with people, right? And do task based testing, do card sort analysis. So you can use various UX methodologies to test, right? And use A/B test as the sort of last expensive sort of thing, right? And A/B test should be done on very in my opinion should be done on nullable hypothesis only. What is a nullable hypothesis? a hypothesis that can be disproven. Yeah. So there's a famous scientific argument which is teapot conjecture, I think, if I remember it correctly, which
Right.
is, if I tell you that there is a flying teapot
Right.
in orbit of the Earth,
Right.
right? There's no way to prove or disprove this hypothesis.
Hmm.
This is a very bad candidate for A/B test, right?
Right.
So some CEO says, or your product manager or somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I like this image better than that image," right? Now, what does that mean? Does that have a business impact? So essentially, what you're saying is, I also believe customer will like this image better than that image.
Right.
Now, like this image, what do you mean by like this image, right? That is why we try to objectify. Do you mean like this image in a sense, look at it? Or do you mean like this image as in it will be effective? If it will
Correct.
be effective, I can measure conversion rate, but conversion rate will not depend on this image. So
Right.
the image is irrelevant to the process, right? Unless you have super high traffic, I would not suggest testing in image. Unless it's a hero image and you're testing like humans versus illustration, that's an interesting concept. But again, if you're doing that sort of conceptual testing, right, like illustration versus human being, you want to do guerrilla testing, or you want to talk to some of the human being along with A/B testing to see the psychological impact of what's happening. So you're
Correct.
not clueless as to why this worked, because sure, illustration work better. Now what? Why? You don't know
Right.
how to build on top of it, right? So a better candidate for A/B testing is, does start free trial now, and start for free now works, right? 30-day free trial. That's an interesting proposition. Or no credit card required is works or not, right? Because that's people. My hypothesis: people are worried that I'll have to give my credit card. Nullable hypothesis, right? The moment you put that text there, if they were worried, they will click through more, right? So I can, with numbers, prove that the moment I added just that text, the CTR is increased, which gives us some confidence that yes, people were worried about this problem, right?
Correct.
One of the that is a good candidate for A/B test. So if you go like, this color is better than that color, it's non-nullable hypothesis, right? However, you will go like, oh, but Google is testing 50 shades of gray. What they are doing with their 50 shades of blue and gray in Google search is at their scale. Is it the wisest way to choose the best blue? No. And I can tell you, like, the more you do, the longer you do this test, as the screens evolve and everything, the shade of blue that works will keep evolving. So it's a never ending test, right?
Right.
Which works for them at their scale. They optimize for like perfect blue. It works, right? If you have that scale, go ahead. I don't know then why you're listening to this podcast, right? We should be listening to yours. But if you don't have that scale, then you should hyper stick to nullable hypothesis, a hypothesis which can be falsified, which can be proven wrong, right? So one of the recent A/B tests we did, and how we presented that test changed how we measured it. We used to have search button on mobile app. We have static tab bar and static header. There was search icon on tab bar and the header. We don't even need two search icons, right? Now, which one is better? Is it top or is it bottom? You can A/B test, but before you A/B test, you must define your hypothesis. You must define opposite of what you were set out to prove, right? Marketing said top. These people said bottom. We were like, okay, our hypothesis is this. It does not matter, right, where you put this, because both are static, both are visible, right? And how do we know that? When we show some people this, when we show some people that, and we show some control group the existing version,
Right.
and then we do benchmarking, like search number of people who click on search button will not change,
Right.
right? And just to have a quality metric tied to it, also the click-through rate of people who look at those search results, or number of people who click on search and then actually search and then actually click on search result will also not change, which
Right.
means you're not targeting different people. It's the same behavior happening, right? So this is to assure that we are not lost in some sort of noise. And that was a nullable hypothesis. It was provable that yes, people could prefer one over the other. It is possible that CTR was higher. It was easier to find up or bottom. And that is where we describe the success of this one will be if there is not that much difference with certain confidence interval, then we conclude this test to be true. The hypothesis is true. It does not matter where you place the search, and that is what the conclusion was, right? And this hypothesis was generated in collaboration with designers.
Correct. So like you said, A/B testing is like the last measure that's supposed to be taken, right? It's not like the first step that should be taken. It should be the last step if no other solution is reaching to a final conclusion. What are the drawbacks of not
Right.
using A/B testing correctly? What are the fallbacks?
The biggest pitfall I've seen people fall into is not they don't understand statistical significance and control. Right? How do you properly design an A/B test? A poorly conducted A/B test can result in you making the wrong decisions, completely wrong decisions, and wrong interpretations out of the A/B test. Right? Uh, like for example, if you don't for example, it's not properly randomized, which means a certain browser is most likely to go here and there, and you didn't do a baseline check. You will end up coming to a very, very wrong conclusion, and then whatever hypothesis you build later on, and whatever work you do later on based on that result, will continue to fail, will not make sense, right? For example, and then people codify those sort of A/B tests like knowledge into the, oh no, we tested it, this works. Where is that A/B test data? We don't know. Like,
Right.
that sort of things start to happen because there was no strong hypothesis. It was just randomly tested, and one of them won. Nobody knows why. It was most likely random noise, right? So that is and without starting with a hypothesis and letting number decide your hypothesis and direction is super, super, super dangerous, right? Because then what, like, might as well put a random button generator, no, like, and let it test like every alphabet in the world. Like, there's no point in doing that sort of thing. You have to use your brain. Like, you can't build an iPhone doing A/B tests, right? You have to start with, but you can decide which one is better tactile feedback with an A/B test, right?
Correct.
Sure, you can do that sort of thing. So don't use A/B test for idea generation. Don't use A/B test for direction, choosing a direction between two sort of things, business direction. Use an A/B test for optimization. Use an A/B test to find better of the two. Use an A/B test to find better copy, better placement, better proposition, better accessibility, all those things. But don't let A/B tests guide you where to go.
Right.
Let A/B tests tell you whether you were right or wrong on a hypothesis. That's the only thing A/B test should be telling you. Anything more than that you're extrapolating from that A/B test, you are torturing the data to say what it does not want to say.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. So, Siddharth, I have last two questions. One of them is, since you mentioned randomness and you also mentioned control but held back, can you explain what control, randomness, and treatment is in terms of A/B testing? Now, that's one question. And the second question is, you've been mentioning you a lot of times about statistics. So, what kind of statistical data, like knowledge, should someone have when they're trying to get into product management?
Right. I think love both of those questions. Let's start with one by one. What you mean by control? So typically in A/B test, right, you have I have a certain landing page, right, and it says book now. Now I want to test some other copy, right? Now one way is for me to just launch that new copy and see what my conversion rate changed or not. That's not A/B testing, right? The problem with that is maybe a new news went out in the world, so everybody's behavior changed. You don't know. Maybe you also made some change in loading times. So what you do is you add a control. Control is typically one part which does not change, a certain population to whom you will not show any changes. And then you have this new population to whom you show the new changed version. Now, as if the world change across the behavior change across the world, everybody started doing UPI more. Let's say you're building a UPI this thing, or booking more, right? Now you will see that on both control and the test, right? So it's not it's something to ignore, right? But if you only see improvement in A and the control remains static, that's when you know you actually made an improvement. That is what control here is. In these days in COVID-19 drug trial, you will hear about randomized drug trial, right? Double-blinded randomized drug trial, which is also an A/B test, by the
Right.
way, right? It's what they do is that they take two populations without them knowing, or the doctors who are treating them knowing. It's the double blinds part of it. They administer one placebo and one actual drug, which look
Right.
as close to and taste as close to possible as to each other. Now, if placebo has an effect, they will see the same result in both. But placebo people don't show those improvements, but only this cohort shows that improvement when both of them don't know that they are being A/B tested. In A/B test, your customer obviously does not know they are getting A/B tested. That is the true benchmark of medical sciences, right? Now we don't need to run double blinded studies for our sort of thing. But a typical A/B test is typically a blind study because the user is not aware they are being tested,
Right.
right? Most of them are not, and that is where you start to get in. That sort of modeling comes in, and what I mean by random is that there was no preference between you assigning this person to this or that group,
Right.
right? That is what randomized means. You are not deciding. It's not like all Safari people you send here. All if you do that sort of thing, you're polluting the result, right? That's what randomized means in this context.
To sum it up,
And the last,
the kind of group is a cohort that is where the feature is the same. There's no new improvement.
right,
Treatment is the one in which the feature is changed and is sent to that kind of cohort. And random is where it's undefined.
random is unpreferred
Okay.
assignment, right?
Right.
Unpreferred. There's no preference. There's no rationality or logic behind it,
Right.
right? It's as come as with just sheer number, like send one here, send one here, send one here, send one here. I don't care who you are, just send one here, send one here, right? That is randomized trial. So or randomizing your A/B test. Of course, you can do allocation of traffic. You can do 80-20, but as long as it's randomized, you should be able to do that sort of testing as well, where only 20% of people you roll out to, you still have a legit A/B test. But
Right.
of course, and when it comes to statistics, start with 8th grade stats, right? What is distribution? What is variance? What is average? What is median? How does median different from the average? What does it mean when average in a data set is more than median? What does it mean when average is less than a median? Right? What is a long tail? What is a short tail? What is x-axis? What is y-axis? These basics you start with 8th grade maths, and then you will get deeper into statistical analysis, right? As a product manager, which is a whole very interesting. Like I'm there's actually, just hold on a second. I'm gonna show you the book. So these are the two books I've gotten to study for myself,
Can't see
which
it,
is
bro.
one.
I think you should.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, awesome. Now I can see it. Bring it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I need to keep it like this. This
Yeah.
biostatistical analysis and probability and statistics, right? So this is what I'm studying. I am not even like one chapter through in either of them, but this is like what you get into, because data is so interesting. Like there's you get into confidence intervals, right? That is another statistical significance you will learn into noise to signal ratio. Then you'll immediately come to law of large numbers, power law, right?
Right.
You've heard of 80-20 rule? It comes
Right.
from data from power
Yeah.
law, right? It's quantifiable. Like 10%, 1% of your customers will make the majority of engagement on your platform, right?
Right.
And then it descends down from there. So there's big chunk, like 20% of customers do like 0.11111% of engagement, right? So that power law you will see everywhere, right? And in the law of large numbers, that scheme distributions, normal distribution, what does it look like? Why is it so useful? How do you define a delta from a normal distribution? How do you define variance in a distribution? How do you imagine when somebody tells you, okay, this is my distribution and this is my like this is my variance on this number? So all of these basics starts to come in statistical analysis, and you can pick those up there. They're free tutorials. There's MIT lectures and God knows what lectures on stats online. You can continue to learn. But if you want to blow your mind, start with statistical significance. Okay. I think for all product managers and enthusiastic product managers, that is one concept that will blow your mind, and that you'll go like, whoa, why did I not know about this before? And you will never look at data the same way again. Then you look at biases like sample selection bias. You look at samples, how randomized sample selection works and how critical it is to build that into the system, and all of those things. Because if you choose your sample incorrectly, you have polluted the result already, right? So there's a beautiful story from World War on selection bias in data, right? So they used to send planes. I don't know which side it was. I think Americans were sending planes to attack Germany, and then planes were returning, and many of them were crashing, right? When they were crashing, whichever plane returned, they noticed that they took major damage in particular area. So they started reinforcing that area, right? This is where they are taking the damage. So, but it did not, like, the problem did not get solved. Like, the weight kept increasing, they became less efficient, but the problem was not getting solved. A statistician was called in. He said, boss, think about it. If a plane returned after taking a damage, that means the plane can take damage in that part and still return. You should reinforce in places where the plane did not take the damage in return. And when this is called selection bias, right? You're doing the selection wrong. And that this is such a brilliant, simple concept. And then they started fixing the wings instead of that area. More planes started coming back, right? So we do amazing, stupid mistakes in data analysis. There's a recent tweet I sent out. Popular person had sent out a tweet. Oh, every successful person I know takes notes. If you don't take notes, blah, 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 blah. Now, there are many, the psychological framing, but the biggest problem with that tweet is selection bias. Because if you interview only successful people, it will look like to you cause and effect, right? Causality, that everything they do, they wake up 5 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. must be success. You're forgetting millions of people who wake up 5 in the morning and not successful, because you did not interview non-successful people. Your sample was biased, right? So that is where you start interviewing non-customers as a product manager, right? As well, where you realize that when that I need to keep an eye on all sides to know the full picture in the market, customer and the non-customer, right? To understand this and understand this. So two things that will blow your mind: selection bias and your statistical significance. Brilliant concepts. YouTube them and see bunch of amazingly visualized videos of what those things mean and how do they matter. And I hope that will get you started and damn interested in analytics, because after that there's just so much amazing shit. There's k-means clustering, there's grouping on data, like there's bunch of analysis you can do, supervised and unsupervised kind of testing. Like there's endless things I can talk about. There's a whole Netflix case study on how they use analytics to improve what thumbnails they show you on Netflix. Right? Beautiful article on banded contextual plus learning. Beautiful things to be done in data. Like data is one hell of a drug. Like if I was not a designer, if I was not addicted to design, I would be addicted to data for sure.
Great, awesome. Like this has been amazing, dude. This brings us to the end of our interview. What an interview, dude. Like it's been great knowing your story. Thanks for sharing so much. This is going to be so insightful for everyone, designers and those who want to get started into product management. Awesome. Can't wait for everyone to give reviews and keep watching, and also everyone to keep Googling for every term that's used in this interview and learn from it. Awesome.
Yeah, I hope you have your tabs open. And if you're watching this, just do it. If your company is giving you opportunity, that's the company to do it in. They're going to take that bet on you. If you fail, you can always go back to engineering and all of that stuff and go like, I'm a failed product manager. Let's bitch about them together. Right? But go give it a try.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and I hope you liked it. If you watched the entire video, drop a comment below saying PMs need design, tech, business understanding, and soft skills to let us know. Subscribe to the Whiteboard or FM YouTube channel to check out other episodes and clips from this interview. This podcast is a part of the 10K Designers Network. You can check out other projects on 10kdesigners.com.